The twilight bells echoed through the silent valleys of Ilaria, as the sky bled amber and violet. Princess Kaelin, 16 years old, stood barefoot on the stone terrace, her silver hair glistening like moonlight in the dying sun. Her breath trembled as she clutched the royal crest to her chest, the last relic from her mother. The air around her felt heavy, as if the world held its breath with her. For years she'd believed her kingdom stood untouched by sorrow, cradled in beauty, veiled in illusion. But that illusion shattered at dusk. The palace had grown cold without her mother's voice. Servants whispered like ghosts. The queen's absence echoed louder than war drums. Kaelin said, "Why did you leave me without a word?" Her voice cracked, brittle as dry parchment. The wind didn't answer. Below, the sacred forest stirred unnaturally, its shadows thickening like smoke. A raven perched near her, tilting its head, as if guarding a secret. The sky cracked with distant thunder, unnatural in the stillness. Something sacred had broken, and Kaelin felt it deep within her chest, that unbearable, invisible fracture. "The sun has set too soon," she whispered. As she turned, a faint golden ember drifted through the air, hovering in front of her heart. Her eyes widened. It pulsed once, then vanished into her skin. The ground hummed faintly beneath her. Kaelin wandered through the royal archives, the scent of parchment and wax seeping into her breath. Her fingers traced the edges of ancient scrolls, hoping for answers buried in silence. The torchlight flickered against the domed ceiling, casting dancing shadows. Her mother's journals were locked in the highest alcove, sealed by a spell Kaelin could barely sense. She said, "You hid truth in the place I feared the most." The silence replied with creaking floorboards. Suddenly, the wall to her left shifted. An inscription she'd never noticed shimmered into view. Her heart pounded. "Only the lost may enter," it read. Her fingers brushed the symbol, and the stone dissolved into mist. Beyond it was a chamber untouched by time, lined with floating manuscripts and glowing runes. In the center, a suspended mirror flickered with pale light. Her own reflection blinked once, then changed. It was her, but older, eyes clouded with pain. The chamber pulsed with memory. Her vision blurred. She staggered back. Something within her had just awakened, something that remembered more than she knew. Inside the secret chamber, Kaelin's steps echoed with eerie clarity. Her breath fogged in the cold air, though no wind touched her skin. Manuscripts floated as if cradled by invisible hands. A soft hum filled the space, not heard by ears, but by the soul. She stepped toward the mirror. Its surface rippled like water before showing her reflection, withered, wise and worn. The older version whispered, "We are already broken." Kaelin froze. The mirror flared once, then burst into light, flooding the room. In a single heartbeat, Kaelin saw visions. Her mother's coronation, a great war beneath violet skies, a shadow swallowing the moon. Her knees buckled. As she collapsed, the light withdrew. The chamber returned to silence. Only the echo of her ragged breath remained. Her heartbeats sounded like drums of fate. "What are you showing me?" she gasped. No answer came, only the distant chime of bells not present in the room. She rose slowly, trembling. She had been summoned to something far beyond her comprehension. Kaelin ran through the palace halls, breath catching in her throat, heart pounding like war drums. Every shadow felt deeper. Tapestries seemed to move when she passed. The world she thought she knew had cracked open. At the end of the corridor she burst into the moonlit garden where she and her mother once prayed. The fountain stood still. No water flowed. "I'm not ready," she whispered. A soft voice answered, "You were never meant to be." A robed figure stood at the edge of the garden, an old woman with eyes like deep wells of time. She held a lantern, flame blue as ice. "You've seen the mirror," the woman said. "Now you must carry its burden." Kaelin fell to her knees. "Why me?" The woman turned. "Because no one else remains." The wind picked up, rustling the trees like whispers from another world. Kaylin's hands dug into the earth. She had prayed for peace. But fate had answered with prophecy. That night, Kaylin sat alone beneath the statue of the first queen, watching stars bloom in the sky like flowers in the dark. Her mind churned with visions and voices not her own. The stars whispered secrets of empires fallen and kings weeping. The ground beneath her felt fragile. The statue's eyes, carved from crystal, shimmered subtly in the starlight. She remembered her mother's lullaby, a song of fire and dawn. Kaylin sang it under her breath. Each word steadied her. "I don't understand," she said aloud, voice shaking. "But I will walk forward." Her shadow stretched long across the garden path. Somewhere far below, the sacred forest roared. The wind carried the sound of awakening. A small fox with glowing eyes stepped into the clearing and bowed. Kaylin stared. "A guide?" she whispered. The fox turned and began to walk toward the mist. She rose and followed without hesitation. A new path had opened, and there was no return. Kaylin followed the glowing-eyed fox deep into the heart of the sacred forest. The moon filtered through twisted branches, creating spirals of silver light on the mossy ground. Her breath was visible in the cold, damp air, and her heart pounded louder than her footsteps. Every step forward felt like she was shedding a layer of who she was. The fox never looked back. It stopped at the edge of a glade where time itself felt slowed. At the center stood a colossal tree, its trunk wider than any tower, its bark pulsing with faint golden veins. Kaylin whispered, "What is this place?" The fox bowed and vanished into the mist. A voice echoed from the tree, ancient and tender. "You carry longing like a blade. Lay it down." Startled, Kaylin stepped back. "I only want to know who I am," she cried. The tree's branches swayed despite the still air. "Then, let go of who you were." A soft wind circled her, carrying laughter, sorrow, and the distant sound of her mother's lullaby. Her eyes welled with tears. She felt the weight of her title, her lineage, her pride. And she trembled at the thought of surrendering it. Kaylin stood motionless before the great tree, as its roots shifted like breathing earth. Memories pressed against her mind, her mother's hand in hers, the weight of the crown, the thrill of being adored. "You cling to echoes," the voice whispered. "That is not who you are." She closed her eyes. Her hands trembled. "But without them, what remains?" she asked. Leaves rustled gently overhead, though no breeze touched her. The forest pulsed with awareness. The tree spoke again. "Desire blinds those who fear emptiness." Kaylin's heart twisted. She remembered her longing, not just for answers, but for the love she'd lost, for the identity wrapped in legacy. Slowly, she knelt. Her palms touched the earth. "Then take it," she whispered. "Take the name, the title, the throne." Light bloomed around her hands. The ground accepted her surrender, and the golden veins in the tree flared brighter. Above, stars broke through the canopy. For the first time, Kaylin felt stripped, unprotected, undefined, and free. When Kaylin rose, the forest no longer felt foreign. The golden veins from the tree had etched softly into her palms like luminous scars. She stepped deeper into the woods where the mist thickened, her breath steady now. She passed through a veil of fog and emerged into a wide glen where spirits danced in silence, translucent forms of monks, queens, children, and beasts. They moved in harmony, neither seeing her nor avoiding her. One paused. It bore her face. Kaylin gasped. The spirit child reached out and touched her forehead. A flood of memory surged, visions of lives she had lived in ages past. "You were never just one," a voice echoed within. Kaylin stumbled, grasping a nearby root. "I don't want to forget who I am now," she whispered. The spirit nodded. "You must remember everything and still let go." Kaylin's chest heaved. She turned in a slow circle. The glen spun gently, like a wheel of time, and she stood at its center, no longer searching for self, but confronting all she had ever been. Kaylin awoke in the glen as dawn broke over the treetops. She had fallen asleep beneath the starlight, her body curled in soft moss, golden markings still faint on her skin. The spirits had vanished, leaving only stillness and birdsong. She rose slowly, her limbs sore, but her mind quiet. In the distance, the scent of smoke drifted in. She followed it, emerging at the edge of the forest to see the outskirts of her kingdom in disarray: burned carts, scattered tools, frightened villagers. A man rushed toward her, eyes wide. "Princess Kaelin," he shouted. "You've returned." She hesitated. The word felt heavy on her tongue. "Yes," she said finally, "but I am not who I was." The man fell to his knees. "We thought you lost." Behind him, a child peeked from behind a barrel. Kaelin's heart twisted. This world still needed her, but not the crown, not the illusion. Something deeper, something true. She walked forward, not as ruler, but as witness. That evening Kaelin sat by a fire built by the villagers, their eyes wide with reverence, fear, and hope. She told them little, only that the queen was gone and that darkness stirred. They pressed her for more. "You must lead us," an elder begged. Kaelin shook her head. "I will walk beside you, not above." Some murmured in confusion, but others nodded. The old order was broken. As stars returned to the sky, Kaelin rose and looked toward the mountain. "There is something buried beneath the throne," she said. "Something that must never rule." She did not know how she knew, only that she did. The fox returned then, sitting beside her in silence. Its presence brought calm. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "we return to the palace, not to reclaim, but to reveal." The fire cracked. Sparks rose like fleeting stars. Kaelin's eyes shone in the light, no longer the eyes of a child who desired, but of a soul that had begun to understand the weight of letting go. Kaelin stood before the fractured gates of the outer palace, flanked by broken statues of long-dead kings. Rain slicked the stone beneath her feet. The air was cold, metallic, filled with the scent of ash and something older, regret. Her boots sank slightly in the mud. Beside her, the fox stared into the ruins without flinching. She whispered, "I remember laughter here." A broken gate groaned in the wind, answering like an old ghost. Entering the courtyard, she saw wilted flowers strangled by thorned vines. Once vibrant banners lay torn. Her heart twisted. This place had been home to joy, and now only echoes remained. Then she heard it. A child's voice. Soft, mocking, familiar. It echoed from the center of the ruined throne room. "Kaelin," it sang. "Why did you let her die?" Her breath caught. She turned sharply. The voice was her own, years younger. She gripped the hilt of her mother's broken dagger at her waist. "Show yourself," she demanded, but her voice trembled. Something deep inside her had come to the surface. Within the shattered throne room, time had twisted. Moss crept along the walls, ivy tangled the chandeliers, and light bled unevenly through the broken dome. Kaelin stepped slowly forward, her boots crunching ancient glass. From the cracked mirror behind the throne stepped a version of herself, 8 years old, in a pristine royal gown. Her eyes were hollow. The child Kaelin stared. "You promised her you'd be strong," she said. "But you cried like a child." Kaelin's fists clenched. "I was a child. You are still." The reflection hissed. "Still clinging to the lie that love protects. It only weakens." Kaelin's breath was ragged now. The child walked closer, footsteps making no sound. "You ran," she said. "You watched her die, and you did nothing." Kaelin screamed, "Enough!" Light burst from her palms, and the room trembled. The illusion flickered, but remained. Kaelin dropped to her knees. She whispered, "I didn't know how to save her." The child vanished into mist. Silence fell, but the guilt did not. Night crept across the skies as Kaelin lit a torch and descended into the palace catacombs. The fox led the way in silence. These tunnels had been built to house memory and shame, filled with relics of rulers and secrets buried in stone. Her steps echoed between tombs, carved with runes and forgotten names. Then a cold presence brushed her skin. In a side chamber, she saw a painting, her mother as a young queen, eyes fierce and kind. In front of it knelt a cloaked figure. "You followed her path," Kaelin said. The figure turned, an old woman with her mother's eyes. "I was her shadow," the woman replied. "And now, I am yours." Kaelin lowered the torch. What did she fear? Not death, said the woman, but silence. A world that forgets. Kaelin stared at the portrait. Then I will remember her, even if the world does not. The woman rose and handed Kaelin a scroll. Then read this, it is her final truth. Her hands shook as she took it. Kaelin unfurled the scroll beneath a lantern's glow. The parchment trembled in her hands. Her mother's handwriting curved in soft, deliberate strokes. It was not a decree. It was a confession. "To my daughter," it began. "If you are reading this, I am already ash and wind." The letter told of a vision, of a coming darkness born not from enemy blades, but from within the crown itself. "The throne corrupts," it read. "And I could not destroy it, but you might." Kaelin's pulse quickened. I wore beauty like armor, but the truth rotted beneath. Tears slipped from Kaelin's eyes. The words were intimate, raw. "Let go of what they made you. Be what you must become." She whispered, "Mother," and fell silent. For the first time, she understood that her mother had not vanished into mystery, but into sacrifice. And now the burden, the blade, the truth, all passed to her. She did not feel ready. But she stood anyway. Dawn broke as Kaelin emerged from the catacombs. The sky had cleared, painted in delicate pink and silver. She stood at the edge of the palace terrace where her journey began. The golden veins in her palms pulsed gently. She could still hear her younger self's voice, still feel the pull of the throne behind her. But she did not turn back. "I am not the queen they wanted," she said, "but I am the one they need." The fox trotted ahead, pausing near the edge. In the valley below, smoke rose from distant villages. Trouble still brewed. But Kaelin had clarity now. The war ahead was not just against invaders, but illusions, traditions, and the echo of power. She looked down at the valley with calm resolve. "Let the world burn away what was false," she whispered, "and I will build something true." The wind picked up gently, and for the first time, it did not feel cold. It felt like breath. Kaelin descended from the palace terrace with slow, deliberate steps. The village below had changed, quiet, somber, eyes watching her from shadowed doorways. Children clung to mothers, and men stood with tools held like weapons. She offered no crown, no guard, only truth. In the village square, a man emerged from the crowd, old, weather-worn, with a scar across one eye. "You left," he said. His voice was low, brittle. "We buried 10 while you walked in the trees." Kaelin's breath caught, but she held his gaze. "I was seeking what you would have me become." The man shook his head. "We need no seekers, we need saviors." The silence turned heavy. She lowered her eyes. "Then, I have already failed." The man stepped back, confused. "You admit it?" She nodded. "I am not here to absolve. I am here to begin." Her voice cracked. The villagers murmured. Then, a small girl stepped forward and placed a flower in Kaelin's hand. Kaelin wept. Not from guilt, but from the unbearable mercy of being seen. Kaelin sat near a low fire that night, the flicker of flame dancing across her face. Around her, villagers gathered in wary circles, listening as she recounted her time in the forest and the scroll left by her mother. Her voice was steady, her words careful. She made no promises. She claimed no throne. "The palace is wounded," she said. "Not by armies, but by silence, by secret." The elder woman from the village leaned forward. "And what will you do with what you know?" Caelin's gaze held the firelight. I will not rule from above. I will walk within. Murmurs passed among them. Some nodded. Others frowned. Caelin turned her hands outward, showing the golden scars etched into her palms. This is what I carry now. Not power, memory. The wind stirred the fire. Sparks drifted upward into the dark sky. For the first time she felt the weight of what could not be undone, and the strange, fragile peace of carrying it anyway. By dawn, the villagers stirred with quiet purpose. Caelin rose with them, her cloak damp from dew, her hair tied back. The fox walked beside her as they prepared for the ascent back to the palace. One child asked, "Will it be dangerous?" Caelin knelt beside him. Yes, and necessary. The group moved together, carrying old tools and torches, not weapons. They passed the river where her mother once bathed her as a child. The memory hit sharp, but she welcomed it. At the forest edge, the elder woman stopped. "You walk into shadows," she said. Caelin nodded. "To bring light." The fox stepped into the woods first, its glowing eyes a beacon. Caelin followed without pause. Behind her the people followed. No army. Just a procession of those who remembered pain. As the mist thickened, Caelin whispered a single line. Not all ruins are meant to be restored. Some must be witnessed to be healed. The trees closed around them. They reached the outer wall of the palace, just as sunbeams pierced the clouds. Vines choked the gates. Statues had crumbled further. Caelin stepped forward, placing her hand on the cold stone. The gate trembled, but did not open. "It no longer recognizes its own blood," she whispered. The fox padded forward, resting its paw against hers. A soft hum emerged. Light spread from her palm across the archway like veins awakening. The vines recoiled. Stone shifted. The gate opened. Behind it, darkness. Dust fell like snow. Caelin turned to the villagers. "This place is not just marble and throne. It is memory. It remembers what we buried." She stepped through the threshold. The smell of rot and incense clung to the air. The others followed, silent. They passed halls lined with mirrors that showed different moments: war, joy, betrayal. Caelin did not flinch. She whispered, "Show me everything." The mirrors obeyed. Deep within the throne hall, Caelin approached the seat of power. Dust coated its surface, and bloodstains, long faded, painted its base. She didn't ascend. Instead, she circled it, fingers grazing the stone. "This was never a throne," she said. "It was a weight." The villagers stood along the walls, watching in silence. Caelin reached beneath the seat, pulling free a rusted blade, hidden for generations. The sword was engraved with the crest of the first queen, her ancestor. Her breath hitched. "This was not meant for rule," she said. "It was meant for choice." The elder woman stepped forward. "Then choose." Caelin stared at the blade, then raised it high. "This is not the end of a line," she declared. "It is the beginning of truth." The sword glowed softly. She drove it into the base of the throne. Stone cracked. A pulse of light spread outward. The throne split down the center. Gasps echoed. Caelin turned. "Now we begin again." The broken throne now lay in silence, split down the middle, like a wound that could finally breathe. Caelin stood still, her fingers no longer gripping the sword. Around her, the villagers remained quiet, as if waiting for a command that would never come. She didn't speak. She closed her eyes and listened, to her own breath, to the wind threading through shattered stone, to the weight of legacy releasing its grip. The fox brushed gently against her leg. She looked down and whispered, "We don't need thrones. We need mirrors." She stepped forward, past the broken seat of power, toward a long-forgotten chamber, her mother's meditation room. Doors resisted at first, then opened with a sigh. Inside, the room was bare, but for a single cushion and a circle of candles, long extinguished. She sat. No crowd. No audience. Just breath. Just silence. She inhaled as her mother once had. Exhaled with grief. The journey inward had begun, not into memory, but into presence. Time stretched thin in the quiet. Kaelin did not move. Hours passed. The candles remained unlit. Her mind wandered at first. Faces, failures, false hopes. But slowly she noticed the gaps. The spaces between thoughts. Between breaths. The fox rested at her side unmoving. She placed one hand over her chest, feeling the ember within pulse faintly. Not power. Not curse. Just energy. Just being. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Not sorrow. Release. She whispered, I don't need to be saved, I only need to stop running. A breeze passed through the chamber, and for a moment the candle wicks sparked without flame. She opened her eyes. The walls no longer felt like stone, but like sky. She stood slowly, breath steady, and opened the chamber doors. Outside, the villagers had not left. They were seated, waiting, quiet. No one asked questions. They simply watched her. Kaelin bowed, not as ruler, but as fellow traveler. The people bowed in return. That night, Kaelin wandered the outer halls alone. The stars above glistened like ancient prayers. Her footsteps echoed faintly through the marble corridors. She passed portraits of ancestors, faces once feared or revered. She paused at her mother's, not to weep, but to witness. You did your best, she whispered. So will I. She removed her cloak, folding it gently on the floor. She walked barefoot now, each step a return to simplicity. At the southern balcony, she looked over the valley. Fires burned in distant corners. War had not ended, but she no longer feared it. She had met her fear, sat with it, and let it breathe. She said aloud, let them come. I will meet them not with sword but with presence. The wind carried her words across the dark, scattering them like seeds. She smiled for the first time in moons, not in triumph, but in surrender. A smile not for others, but for herself. The next morning, Kaelin rose before the sun. Alone, she descended into the eastern gardens, the place once forbidden to her as a child. Overgrown paths twisted around stone lanterns. Dew sparkled like diamonds on every leaf. Birds sang a hesitant chorus. She found the old reflecting pool, its surface clouded by years of stillness. She knelt and placed her hand in the water. It rippled, revealing her reflection not as princess or orphan, but simply a girl, awake. She said, you are not broken, you are becoming. Behind her, the fox waited. She smiled and stood. With both hands she pulled back her hair and tied it with a string of woven grass. No crown, no silk, just presence. The villagers began to arrive. One by one they took seats on the stone steps. No words were exchanged. Kaelin stepped into the center and sat again. This time not in isolation, but in quiet community. The practice would begin. The day unfolded with silence as its language. Kaelin guided them, not with words but with stillness. Children sat beside elders. Laborers sat beside widows. Breath synchronized across the garden. Wind passed gently through cherry blossoms overhead, and the throne, now broken, had not been rebuilt. It was not needed. Kaelin walked slowly among them, not above but within. She paused beside the youngest child and offered her hand. The girl took it. No teachings. Only presence. The fox curled near the pool, eyes closed. Peace was no longer an idea, it was embodied. Laughter would return someday. So would mourning. But for now, they practiced. Kaelin finally sat in the center again, legs folded beneath her. She whispered to herself, this is the kingdom I choose. She closed her eyes. Around her, 100 hearts beat in rhythm. Not ruled. Not led. Just together. The day passed with no proclamation. only breath. And for the first time, that was enough. The stillness broke with thunder. At dawn, a dark cloud surged over the northern mountains. A procession of armored riders appeared, banners blackened by soot, metal glinting like teeth. They were not invaders from outside, but remnants from within. Once loyal to the crown, now bound to conquest. Kaelin stood at the southern gate, the fox by her side. Her body did not tremble. Around her, villagers gathered, not with weapons, but with presence. The elders formed a circle. Children sat in the center. She did not shout commands. She whispered, "They expect fear. Give them stillness." As the riders approached, their leader called out, "Is this your army?" Kaelin stepped forward alone. "No," she replied. "This is truth." The rider scoffed. "You think truth can shield you?" She raised her hands. "No, but it can set you down." The wind held its breath. The riders halted. Not because of threat, but because they had never seen power kneel. Rain began to fall, soft and steady. The rider dismounted. He approached Kaelin, sword drawn. "Then kneel before steel," he said. She did not move. "If you strike yourself," she answered. The man hesitated. "I served your mother," he muttered. "And now you betray her memory." Kaelin stepped forward slowly. "No, I honor it," she ruled to preserve power. "I walk to dissolve it." Her words were not rebellion. They were release. "You lost your path," he growled. "No," she said. "I stopped pretending." The rider raised his blade. She did not flinch. The rain pooled between them. And then with a cry of rage, he threw the sword into the mud. "Then what are we to do?" he asked. Kaelin stepped into the circle. "You choose," she said. Each breath, a new path. Slowly, he fell to his knees. Behind him, other riders lowered their weapons. Not conquered. Not converted. Simply returned to themselves. The gates opened. The palace accepted them all. Kaelin led the riders and villagers not into war, but into stillness. They entered the throne room as one body. The broken throne remained untouched. Kaelin stepped aside. "This is not mine," she said. "It belongs to silence." She led them into the inner courtyard, where the reflecting pool now glimmered with cleansing rain. She asked each person to kneel, not in surrender, but in presence. No rituals. No speeches. Only breath. One soldier began to weep. A widow offered him her hand. A child began to hum a song of the old days. The fox circled the courtyard perimeter, then curled at Kaelin's feet. She closed her eyes. Around her, peace formed not as law, but as rhythm. "We are not bound by crowns," she whispered. "We are bound by stillness." And in that moment, none disagreed. There was no enemy anymore. Only echoes dissolving into light. That night, a fire was lit not for war, but for warmth. Around it, stories were shared, of mothers lost, brothers forgiven, dreams rekindled. Kaelin sat among them, not at the center, but at the edge. She listened more than she spoke. The sword that split the throne lay beside her, untouched. One elder leaned in. "Why not rebuild?" Kaelin looked at the flames. "Because what broke wasn't stone. It was the way we looked for leaders instead of light." Murmurs of understanding rippled. She stood and offered the sword to the fire, not to burn, but to rest. "Let it sleep," she said. The group fell into silence again. A young boy asked, "Will you still be our queen?" Kaelin smiled. "I'll be whatever we all become together." The boy nodded. That was enough. Above them, stars blinked open, not with prophecy, but with quiet permission to simply exist. At dawn, Kaelin stood once more at the edge of the terrace, watching light rise over the healed valley. No banners flew. No drums sounded. only the slow return of breath to a land long held in tension. The fox sat beside her. Below, people woke not as subjects, but as selves. The broken throne remained undisturbed. The palace no longer felt like stone. It felt like song. Kaelin whispered, "I thought peace would be something I had to create." She smiled gently. "But it was something I had to allow." A breeze stirred her hair. She looked to the horizon. No destination. Only unfolding. She turned back to descend the stairs. Today there would be gardens to tend, wounds to clean, children to guide. Not duties of a queen, but rhythms of one who belonged. As she walked, her shadow stretched ahead, not behind. The light did not follow her. It met her. The sun rose gently, not in fanfare, but in hush. Kaelin walked through the village as morning fog lifted, revealing new gardens where ash once lay. Children planted saplings where broken swords had fallen. Elders painted over walls scarred by flame. No one called her queen. No one bowed. They greeted her with nods, with presence, with shared breath. She stopped to help a woman mend a cart. The woman handed her a nail. No words needed. Kaelin's hands bore scars now, not from battle, but from building. She liked that. The fox trotted ahead, tail flicking like a rhythm keeper. A child ran past and laughed. Kaelin turned to follow, barefoot in dew-damp earth. Every sound was softer. The wind had no edge. Even the bird's song carried weight without sharpness. She looked to the sky and whispered, "Let this be the kingdom we carry, not in stone but in stillness." The trees rustled as if to answer, not with command, but with grace. That afternoon, Kaelin returned to the ruins of the temple once reserved for kings. Its pillars still stood, blackened and crumbled, open to the sky. She did not enter as royalty. She entered as witness. Birds nested in the rafters now. Ivy wrapped the columns. She walked through shafts of gold light, dust swirling like memory. In the center, where incense once burned, she sat. Not to pray but to listen. Her breath matched the rhythm of wind. She placed her hand on the cracked stone floor and whispered, "What once ruled me no longer owns me." A memory flickered. Her mother's voice, distant but soft. "Let go, my child, and you will become." Kaelin smiled. Not with triumph, with release. Around her, the silence held no burden, only clarity. She traced the stone with her fingers, like one might trace the lines of their own palm. And she realized this place, like herself, had not died. It had become sacred by breaking. By evening, Kaelin stood by the river that marked the kingdom's edge. The water was calm, reflecting twilight. On the far shore no banners flew. No enemies waited. Just wilderness. Behind her, the village was quiet. Before her, the unknown. She stood not to choose between past and future, but to honor both. She let a small folded paper boat slip from her fingers into the current. It drifted slowly, carrying nothing but presence. "No path is ever truly lost," she whispered. "Only changed." The fox sat beside her, gaze steady. A heron landed nearby, undisturbed. The current moved without force. Just flow. Kaelin did not cross. She did not stay. She simply stood. And that was enough. The river sang its own language, older than thrones, quieter than crowns. She exhaled, not with sorrow, but with stillness. For the first time, she knew she could return to this place again. And if not, it would live within her. The stars bloomed across the night sky like old stories returned. Kaelin lay in the grass outside the palace walls, arms behind her head, the fox curled at her side. Crickets sang. A breeze rustled the grass in waves. She no longer felt the weight of destiny. She felt only gravity, and how it held her gently. She whispered into the dark, "I once thought the world needed a queen." A pause. It needed a witness. Her breath matched the rhythm of wind again. The sky did not answer. It mirrored. She closed her eyes, letting the sounds fill her chest. She thought of every voice that brought her here. The child within. The mother lost. The villagers. Even the silence. They had not shaped her path. They had been her path. And now, nothing more needed to happen. No resolution. No final act. Just being. Just breath. The stars did not flicker for her. They flickered with her. At dawn, the bell in the village square rang not by decree, but by a child's hand. It was soft, unhurried, a tone that sounded like awakening. Kaylin stirred from sleep beneath the tree line, hair dew-laced, smile faint. She sat up slowly, stretching into the morning. Around her, the world was not transformed. It was simply alive. Birds fed their young. The river moved. A breeze nudged a foxtail. She rose and returned, not to rule, but to join. In the square, the people were gathering. Not for orders, but for morning tea. Someone handed her a cup. No title. No bow. Just presence. She sipped and felt the warmth settle in her chest. Someone laughed. Someone sang. She looked to the rising sun. "Let all things pass," she said softly. "And let us remain in the breath between." And with that, the story ended, not with an ending, but with a beginning. One that asked nothing but stillness.